Welcome to Keeping Tabs. I'm Tabitha Croc, and every Monday, I talk to someone here in North Idaho with the goal to connect more people in the Coeur d'Alene area. And then every Friday, I talk to someone outside the community to bring in a new perspective and to learn a little bit about yourself. If you like frozen yogurt, paninis, adult floats, endless mimosas, 32 Below, Froyo, and more is for you. They're located in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and they got a little something for the whole family. On Saturdays and Sundays, they have endless mimosas. So make sure you go check them out, like them on social media, go to Yelp, give them a great review. They're an amazing business, community-minded, and doing some great things in our community. All right, I have Doug with me this morning, and I'm so excited to chat with this guy. I think I actually scheduled this podcast just because I missed you and wanted to talk to you. So that's really the point of doing this. This individual has been one of my favorite people since I met him. Doug brings this energy to a room that's very positive and uplifting, and you just like, we've had meetings where it was super like supposed to be a 45-minute meeting where it ends up 2 hours because we have so much to talk about and learn from each other. He's in education. He's a speaker. He does all kinds of great stuff. So first of all, thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you. I'm just proud of you. Like, you are one of my favorites too. You're just a rock star in so many areas. And I know that you are empowering people, and I love where you're headed and listening to some of the podcasts. I can't say enough kudos to you. I'm just proud of you because I think you're both in a weird place, and we started having these business conversations, and you had a real passion. You were going to go that route of empowering women and empowering people and inspiring, and so I'm just super proud of you too. So I'm like, it's really cool. We haven't had a chance to catch up in a long time, and so it's this will be fun.
Yeah, and we originally talked. Thank you so much for those kind words. We had originally talked, we were going to do an afternoon podcast and actually have a couple drinks. So I'm beating you to it, but we'll do it off the podcast. We need to have drinks and catch up.
Yeah, I like it. So yeah, so let me ask you that. What's your? I'll switch roles for a sec. What's your morning drink and what's your afternoon drink? Just out of curiosity.
We got to do mimosas in the morning. Or a Bloody Mary. That's always great.
Okay. Okay.
I'm really, I actually have a thing for tequila lately. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've been loving the tequilas.
That's funny. I've always, in the afternoon after work, I love it, a good whiskey or something like that. But like, I'll tell you, I have a friend and a colleague that, they're on this tequila kick, and they were talking about like this tarantula tequila, and it's like this, it's kind of like got a citrus to it, and I'm like, holy cow, I've never even, it's like a whole new world. So that's my tequila. That's my tequila recommendation. Very professional conversation.
I love it. This is how we're starting with it. People listening will be like, oh, this should be good.
That's funny.
Yeah. So anyways, tell us about you, a little bit of background about you, and also sure. Kind of what you're up to right now.
Yeah, so a lot going on. Just kind of starting somewhat chronologically, you and I had an opportunity to meet in some business environments a couple of years ago. I think at the time, I was in, I don't even know, close to 200 schools. I was going around and doing speaking gigs and consulting gigs. My background was in business and public relations back in the 90s. After I was a very much failed baseball player that couldn't hit the left-handed pitcher to save my life, still can't. And so I actually learned a different aspect of education. And I had a mentor named Pete Orgill, and then I had a great mentor, and my father basically get me into education. And I absolutely just fell in love with kids. I fell in love with the energy. I fell in love with the development of staff and development of people, and that human spirit. And so I spent the better part of just over almost 2 decades in education. And I was really blessed. I got an opportunity. I had a couple of kind of some personal and then also some school awards that allowed me to start doing some speaking gigs. And the speaking gigs was just, I started to come up with this theme that was, I wanted to serve, support, and inspire. And that's all. And it was like, I didn't have any fiscal goals. I didn't, and you're probably supposed to, that's probably really bad business management. But all I cared about was just helping others. And it was kind of a new life. I took on a new perspective completely for my personal and professional life in about 2018, 2019. And then, of course, COVID hit. And there was all kinds, I think it changed all of us, obviously. And the word, I think the word that just continues, every time I hear it on news, it's like unprecedented. I'm like, please, let's use a different word. Can we just move on off that word? Because I think we've all been impacted and some of those things. But yeah, so Tabitha, then that takes us, up to our conversations. And then you and I have always been so supportive of each other in social media world. And even it's funny because we've actually, we've watched our own personal lives, different things, and we'll kind of support each other in the things that are going on. And so it's you and I've always had this unique friendship, and it's really cool. It's just it's been always a super healthy business and personal. So.
Yeah, I know and I feel like I keep up. Thank goodness for social media. I mean, then I know what you're up to and what you're doing.
Right.
So, what are you doing right now professionally? Did you say?
Yeah. So unique times. So I've actually had an opportunity to jump back into some K-12 as obviously conferences and schools and businesses that were shut down and speaking gigs. I've had an opportunity to kind of jump back into some K-12 opportunities in Central Washington, back in kind of that leadership role with staff, with kids. I'm actually having some opportunities to still take on the consulting piece. Our company was really starting to do brokering. We were brokering a lot of speaking gigs. And so there's not speaking gigs. So that complexion has changed, where we've actually had some opportunities to kind of guide people on how to do that now in Zoom. I've always said that this space is definitely made for radio, not TV, Zoom, anything too close, obviously. But it's been cool, and it's been great getting a chance to get back into some things. I know that you base everything out of Coeur d'Alene and Spokane, and they're still home. I got one kid that just headed off to college down in Southern California, and then another one that's just wrapping up high school. And so, that Spokane region's still home, and down in the Yakima region is still home for me. So it's been cool just having an opportunity to kind of rebuild components to the K-12 leadership and working with staff, working with students again, and some of those things.
That's really cool. So, you obviously have done a little bit of everything. What led you down the path into the education world?
I was actually rest in peace, Seattle Sonics. I was actually working in a sports marketing firm at the time in Seattle. It was like the coolest job ever. It was I was working in Green Lake, and I was working for this company that, everything that you think that you're it's the old theory, be careful what you wish for because you might just get it.
Yep.
And I literally got what I wanted. It wasn't of the financial things that I wanted, but it was like the coolest office. It was the coolest place. And I was getting to a point where I was driving, and I had a former, and I never played for this guy, but he was a coach, and his son was playing at the University of Washington, and he constantly called me, and he's like, hey, let's go get lunch, and kept on me. And between him and my father just pointing out components that you can change people's lives, you can inspire kids, you have that ability, that's really what led me down that path. And it was a journey that, I still had the ability to do partnerships with business, still had ability to rope in community people. But like in anything else, we make our failures too. We're like students, like staff or anything else. We have our challenges, and then we have our successes. And so it is definitely a lifelong learner. I think we all are. I love John Lennon's quote about when he was like 5. Are you a John Lennon fan at all?
I am. I'm not a huge John Lennon fan, but
are you really? So you're like hanging on the edge right now on this. So one of his.
Did you see that at 10? I was gonna write it down.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna totally butcher it, but I'm gonna give you the one of the coolest things that happened. So I'm down in Redondo Beach. I'm walking I come off stage and I'm having an opportunity working with this one of the high schools down there, and this little gal was in the hallway and she was putting this cool poster together, and I was lost. I actually was trying to find the office to go back to where the heck the parking lot was to find my rental car, and so I'm walking through, and this is one of the most detailed posters I've ever seen, and she has the John Lennon quote that I've heard or seen before, and it goes something to this degree, and probably in a Zoom like this, I should quote it properly, but I'll do the best I can. It was basically when somebody asked John Lennon, what do you want to do and what do you want out of life? And his answer was, I want to be happy. And he shared that was something his mom taught him at an early age. And it wasn't, and so I asked this girl in this high school, and I'm like, so how does this resonate with you? John Lennon, you're at a different, you're 17. She was wicked smart, had been in and out of some alternative schools. And she said, I adamantly, she goes, in everything in my soul, believe in this. She said, they're trying to tell me in this class, a certain class, where are you going to go after high school? Are you going to go to a trade school? Are you going to go to tech school? Are you going to go to college? Are you going to, where are you going to go? And her answer was happy. And so the teacher pushed her and said, I want to know more. Where are you getting this? How do you get this? And it was one of the most powerful conversations. And so that piece really resonated with me. And it's the old theory. We learn a lot from our students. I know that I have learned far more from my failures or my challenges than I ever have from my successes. I've never learned anything from any award I've ever won. I've always learned from something that has been a challenge. And I think as long as you keep your feet on the ground and you keep reaching for the stars, I think that's that huge piece. And that John Lennon quote, so she basically told me, I said, hey, do you mind? I said, this sounds really weird, but I want to hear the follow-up of this conversation. So like 2 or 3 weeks later, I love Twitter and I love LinkedIn and I do a lot of personal stuff on Facebook. I am not the greatest at Instagram. And I don't quite get Snapchat and Instagram. I'm still, I don't know, it might be an age thing. I'm still working through that too. But she sends me the message and then shows me the kind of the pictures. And she said, thank you so much for, that conversation. And I was like, thank you. You taught me. And it was really a cool thing on what her next steps were and how she was going to start a business. And she wanted to be happy. But she had to have some of the skills. She had to have a trade skill that she had to have that trade. And she's like, I never really thought about that. She said, I have to put steps together to get to what my goal was. And she said, that's what I got out of you. And I said, well, I got a lot more out of you than you did me. And so those are like, I've had so many of those conversations, like, oh my gosh, I grew as an individual and as a human from that conversation. And it's awesome. And so when you ask about going into education, I never ever in 100 years did I ever think that you would get to have those conversations. And I've always said I'm far more scared of a kindergarten crying when I don't know what to do versus a gang member wanting to threaten me as a former principal. And, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to, I can totally handle the person that's going to threaten something versus a kid. I look at the little guy and they're crying. I'm like, I don't know. You can love on them. You don't know what to do. So yeah, education's it's a lifelong learning process, but that common theme is just trying to keep inspiring others and trying to keep yourself motivated too.
Yeah, it's true too. Like kindergartners don't know their emotions. They don't know how to, like, articulate how they're feeling. Like a gang member, a 17-year-old boy that's like, I'm gonna threaten you. He at least kind of understands his emotions and can articulate, like, I hate your guts because of this.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's crazy.
So you're out there inspiring so many, young youth and other people around you. And I know tons of colleagues and stuff because you're very active on, LinkedIn and stuff, and you're constantly tagging and talking about how these people are inspiring you. Like what inspires you to be your best self?
I think that's been the biggest learning experience for me. I really, I think sometimes you have to learn and inspire through others. I think that there have been, the one thing that I started, this is last year, is really, I never really listened to people when they said gratitude is attitude and paying it forward and learning how to do that. And so I started that process of really trying, sorry, I apologize, my phone's blowing up here. I had tried everything in my power to really put my best foot forward on growing through reading, growing through mentors, growing through some different things. Negative talk was something I was really struggling with myself. As you can see, even in this little box that we're trapped in right now, I'm 100 miles an hour. You know that. You've seen me live. And so, like, my ADD, ADHD comes across like, like, wow, like energy's out of control sometimes. But sometimes that is, I did a lot of research on people like Chris Farley and performers and performers that have had that high level of energy, but then they go into a manic. And so I've never been in that state, but I think that people that think fast, sometimes we get into a negative talk. And so you start, putting negative thoughts in your head. And so I had to try to find ways. And so people like, there's a guy by the name of Tom Ballou or Bayou, I'm not sure of the pronunciation. He runs Impact Theory, Impact University. Unbelievable. If you're watching this, if you get anything out of this, I will tell you that is one of the most powerful people. And his wife is Lisa. They ran a multi-billion. It was $1 billion company he sold that was like a protein bar. It was called Quest. But now he is just dedicated to this. So like in personal relationships, like dating relationships, his wife Lisa takes that and kind of goes that route. But Tom has got tons, and I mean tons of stuff online, on YouTube, motivational things. And I've had people that are in places that they have that same situation, like negative talk. How do you pull yourself out of different things? How do you inspire each other? And he's got me kind of in a place now where I'm really starting to write more. I'm starting to do some things. So I had to restructure my own habits. And so I'm starting to read 5 pages in the morning, just before I do anything, get up, kind of do, 3 minutes of gratitude, 5 minutes of just those habits, and trying to change my habits, read a little bit, then get that workout in, which I skip often, which I'm working on. Everybody's not, working through that. But that's that piece that I think you have to have mentors sometimes that are greater than the people that we actually know. And that's through, whether it's Malcolm Gladwell, Tipping Points, or it's a John Maxwell leadership series, or John Gordon leadership series. So I've attached myself to some really strong mentors, even locally. And I would highly, 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 highly recommend an interview with a guy by the name of Randy Russell. He is one of the most motivating people I've been around. He's the superintendent at Freeman School District. And then he just published a book called The Three Ships, which is partnerships, relationships, and leadership. Unbelievable dude, has a podcast himself. And so I've kind of just taken my mindset completely different than where I was from about, 1999 to about 2017, and really changed that concept of trying to rebuild myself and refocus and refresh and find out how self-care can actually be beneficial for others and people in your personal and professional life.
That is
probably answered that way too long.
No, that's such a good point. Is like self-care is actually helping everybody around you. And I don't think
it is. And I never saw that.
Exactly. And they put themselves second to their kids, to their job, to whatever it is. But then it's like starting to affect their home. It's starting to affect their daily life. It's affecting everything because they're not taking care of themselves. And I think that's a nugget for this whole podcast right there, is take care of yourself and it will take care of everybody else around you.
Yeah, I think that it really got me writing. I've got a couple of writing projects. I've always done a lot of journals and some different things for educational journals and some different things, but I found myself and I would love, Tabitha, I would love to come back when one of the 2 publications get published, and I'd love to jump back on here and just talk about that concept of what project I've got as a team that we're writing on, and some research that I had a chance to do, because I started falling in love. And I never was a data guy. I was like never a person like talked about test scores with kids. I'm like, I don't care about the test score. I care about the kid. Does the kid have power? Does the kid have food at the house? How's the family functioning? What's going on? And some of those conversations sometimes have even got me into some hot water, because schools oftentimes are so data focused. And I get that. I totally respect where people are going with that. But oftentimes I found myself as a social worker and trying to inspire and trying to bring and make sure that they know, hey, listen, this is the cards that you were dealt. And those cards that you were dealt is really tough. But guess what? We can play them, and we're going to try to keep you moving. And that's really hard for both staff or even in business presentations that I've been in, and it's like people really feel they start having that self-talk of who they are, defining themselves, because a lot of times that's what people tell them that that's who they are. So
yeah, I'm the same way as you. I've never liked the data. I've never been like, and I've worked with like boys and girls clubs. So I've worked in the education kind of world and with kids,
right.
youth and stuff. And now I love the data because I know as now a nonprofit leader, that information will help me get money to take care of my nonprofit. And so how important it is. And then you kind of geek out about it. You're like, oh, we're getting this much, and like this much money comes from this, and this is how many people
Right.
are serving on the North Idaho Centennial Trail. And like, it's exciting.
I
So
love it.
I'm the same way as you. I was like, let's just help people. Oh, well, we need money.
I love, and you do not, I know you do a great job on so many levels, but I mean, you don't promote yourself and the work that you're doing. A lot of the times you're promoting the work of everybody else around you and the people in your lives. And so you've always been one to do, very humbled leadership approach, or kind of a servant leader approach, which I've always really respected. But then there's that piece where somebody like you, Tabitha, if you and I we're sitting in coffee, or we're after this, this podcast, I'm like, all right, here's the deal. When are you going to write? Because you got to have a book, sister. You got to have something that you can reference. You got to come back to it. And say, well, this is where we are. And so I was finding myself, Tabitha, on these conversations, and I really pushed. I pushed some really strong people in my life that I was like, oh my gosh. And that was part of that thing where, like a Randy Russell with the 3 Ships, which is just an amazing book series. I mean, he's going to have a book series and he's going to do some great things. But then he came back on me and he's like, dude, he goes, you're telling me, well, why don't you get your book going? And so I'm like, I don't know if I want to, my part of me is like, the inspiration piece is great, but then there's another side of me that I really want to maybe write about something that's a little bit different, and still impact people. I really want to impact people and try to help people in other areas that maybe I haven't had that chance to do that. And so that's something that's just kind of been fun for me to kind of start going through that process.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my gosh. See, and that's why you and I need to have one of our meetings, because I was like, I need your energy and your excitement. And also you called me out too. You're like, why aren't you doing that? Because I was like, hey, Doug, I'm going to do this and this. And you're like, why not? You doing that?
I remember that.
And then you know what? Before you're like, hey, are you doing that? Because you need to. You would thrive in this. I'm like, oh, okay, don't call me out. You're making me.
No, where were we? We were at where is that place in Coeur d'Alene that was like the underground? Like it was like, what is that place?
It's the lair at the Innovation Den.
Right. That place was kind of retro and pretty cool. And I'm like, well, this place is legit. And that's where I think that's where we had that conversation. So that's awesome.
Yep. I remember it.
Yeah, so that's good. So are you writing it all? Are you putting anything on paper to get?
Yes, kind of. With my podcast, now we're turning the interview around again. With my podcast, I'm actually using the people I talk to, and I'm using the content they give me and starting to put some stuff together. And eventually, after hundreds of podcasts, I want to put something together from each of my different interviews, because you guys all give me the fuel and give me the great advice, or these just spit the knowledge to me. And so eventually I will be putting something together with my podcast. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Tabitha, one of the cool things I just saw, I saw a guy I can't remember what state. He's down in the South, but he took all of his podcasts and then basically turned it into testimonials of a book. And it was really cool. So he's in that process of like taking those and just kind of getting the best out of each one. You got your content's already done.
Yeah. I don't have to, because I'm kind of the thinker you are, as an ADD, kind of like all over the place. And it's like, how do I put these thoughts into a book or into like an e-read or whatever it is? How do you, and so I'm like, I've just talked to 100 people. They just gave me great information.
That's awesome.
So is there something that you wish you would have known before starting your career?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's so many things. I think that if you took that pie chart and you could create that pie chart of what should I have done differently in certain areas. Self-care is one that, with a job, obviously when you're in a job and you're grinding, you're not working for a living. And that's something that you need to understand, that you're putting 70 hours in. That 70 hours can be washed away tomorrow. And so I think that oftentimes you've got to have that self-care. Going back to self-care, that's something where my personal development has really changed over the last couple of years, of just understanding that you can't be your best when you are rugged. And I mean, like that's everything. I've always been really, really hyper focused with my kids and hyper focused with job. And unfortunately, some of the other things kind of suffer sometimes. So, I would totally love to sit down with like let's say a new teacher, a new person getting into business, and say, listen, have you set up like a Roth? Have you set up like a 403B? Have you set up, and not to get too financially boring, but I think that those are things that I wish I either listened. I'm sure people were saying it. Who knows? Probably went through one ear and out the other. But I do think that the financial pieces are there that people should be thinking about. But also chase your passion. And that's the thing. Like I had a conversation with the guy, do some life coaching in the Spokane region. And with that life coach, I got an engineer friend, and he would be totally open. He's like, dude, you got to tell people this is working. And so he's been an engineer 7 years, and he's got a passion to run a business. And he's like, it's that fear, like you and I've talked about. How do you have that fear to leave something and then chase what your passion is? And what happens if your passion changes in midstream? Like you're like going 100 miles an hour and you're set sail on this voyage, and all of a sudden you get these waters, like, this maybe isn't what I really wanted to do. Kind of similar to what I did with the sports marketing firm way back in the day. And it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, working with the Sonics and Mariners and Seahawks. I'm like, this is awesome. And, thinking, okay, this is that next step. And I'm like, this is cool, but this isn't my passion anymore. It's kind of like I told somebody the other day, I go, it's kind of like baseball cards. We collected baseball cards. I did. I loved my baseball cards growing up. And it was like, yeah, eventually you kind of grow out of it. But now, I can still remember the backs of them. I can still respect that history. And so, I was coaching with this guy, and we talked about passion and how do you chase your own greatness, and how do you go through that? And so, sometimes for a person like, he's working 8 hours as an engineer, he has to step back and go, do I have to wake up an hour early to start working on my passion on the next step? Do I have to work an hour later? Well, I've got my kids, I've got my family, So he was having that struggle of how do you manage chasing that passion when you're all throughout the day. And for me, I'm always, I see young, and I love, you've got these superstars that are under 30 and superstars that are under 40 and all these people. And I'm like, I couldn't guide anybody at that time in my life. I couldn't even guide myself. So, I think that it's kind of taken some war history and kind of jumping through those failures and pitfalls, and then grabbing yourself up and inspiring yourself and trying to go, hey, you've got to get it together. And it takes a lot. I mean, if anybody that's ever been in like type of addiction recovery or anything, or anybody that's trying to do something new, or even a workout, like even if you're working out in the morning, it takes discipline, it takes those habits, and it's really hard. And so it's hard to change. It's I think the Japanese term is kaizen, and kaizen is the Japanese term for change. It's a really cool thing to look up, actually. And so you start thinking about that, and you're like, oh my gosh, okay, how can I jump through these hoops and change? And I've read tons of books and cool stories on how people have had to change.
Oh wow, that's crazy. Yeah, that's amazing. So I'm looking forward to, I have a couple fun questions.
Okay, do it.
First of all, I asked this question because I want to know where to go, but what is your go-to restaurant because since you're in the Spokane area, what is your go-to restaurant?
Well, it's funny. I mean, and now I'm, like I said, I'm in Central Washington, primarily during the week, but on the weekends, I'm always in Coeur d'Alene and Spokane. My go-to, I have a hard time, the Elk, the 2-7, their franchise. I can't think of the name. It's off of Sherman. Is it White? I can't remember the other name in the Coeur d'Alene one. It's just kind of one of my go-tos. But I have been doing something. This is a little bit of the heartbreaking moment in the interview here today. So my daughter and I we've been doing dad-daughter dates forever. I mean, since she was a little one, and then, of course, now she's off to college, and so we've been doing these dad-daughter dates, and we were heartbroken when Rocky Rococo's went out of business during the COVID time, and we're like, oh my gosh. So through middle school and high school, Chaps is definitely one of our go-to. Celeste Shaw is one of the best business owners. She is one of the most inspiring women I've ever been around. I just adore how she leads. She's got a lot of her, she's got a lot of shops as well that she sells. I'm doing a horrible presentation for poor Celeste. I'm sorry, but one of the things that we've done, my daughter and I, we just do Chaps, and that's our go-to. And,
I like
my
that.
son and I, we do a lot of more franchise type stuff. But I don't know, what's yours? I'm curious what yours are.
Oh, so I'm a huge fan, Phil Joe. So I have, Syringa, Bluebird, Monarch. I know he doesn't own but Garnet, like all of those are my go-to restaurants in Coeur d'Alene.
Nice.
They're
nice.
What's that?
Are you a pizza girl?
I do love fire. I'm not a huge pizza person, but I like to have a thin crust. It has to be like artesian, like it has to be taste good.
Yeah. My poor children have, I think the home cooking has always been either Italian or it's either Italian or barbecue or something like that. But it's those are. But the thing is, like, it depends on the crowd that you're too. I mean, like if it's after hours or something like that, I'll go see my buddy Ryan Crow down at Pastango. It's a great. What's you like Pastango too?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Big Ryan. He's a great dude. I mean, like, it depends on the crowd that you're in, whether you're, if you're the adult kids, but yeah, I think that I love trying new stuff too, and just going out and seeing what else is out there and trying new things too.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, let's say that I gave you a billboard and you could put anything you want. You could say anything, you could have photo, whatever you want in this billboard. It's downtown Spokane. What would you put on this billboard?
Oh, that is such a good question. That's a great podcast question. I've got two that just popped into my head, and they're probably, who knows whether. I think I would say this. I would probably go with, you are not tired, you are just not inspired.
Ooh.
And then maybe a ... What's your why? Or something, I don't know. Something like that.
Yeah, I'd be driving, I'd be like, ooh, ouch, that one hit there. Yep, right there.
I think it would, I think it would be something like that, because, I've always seen through a lot of presentations and a lot of people talk about what's your why, but I do think oftentimes we have goals and we have some things, and I would say one of my challenges just personally is, I've really stuck to the writing and reading and really self-development, but I haven't got to that place where I can be disciplined to work out. And so I'm not inspired enough to do it yet. And it's really frustrating. And so that's that next piece in this year, trying to develop yourself and trying to get better. And everybody's got their little, pieces of the pie that they're working on. And I think that would be it. I think it's, you're just, that aspect, you're tired. You're not inspired yet.
Yeah, I love that. That's spot on. It'll probably be on my little board here. One of my podcasts. Cool. You got to keep watching podcasts so your quote shows up on the board.
Okay. Awesome. That's good.
As we wrap up, I hate talking about it, but I always like to bring it up, is like, we all are going through COVID in some way. Whether it's emotionally, physically, some people lost their job, some people are going through depression. Could you leave us with like a positive piece of advice as we go through this pandemic election craziness?
Boy, I mean, it's super sad on so many levels. One of the things my daughter and I, and even a good core of friends, got a good core of people both in the Seattle region and in Spokane region. We kind of started a process, and was called PB&J. And I know this sounds really crazy, but we'd go get a pillow, a blanket down at the Goodwill, and then we would actually put sometimes scripture, like a scriptural verse or like a motivational quote. And so we would, for the homeless people, we would go out and it was called the PB&J Project. We've never publicized it. We don't really, we've actually had some outside funding to actually support it, which is not a lot. I mean, you're going and getting pillows and blankets from, say, Goodwill. And then we do like this journey is the last word of J. And what is your journey? And try to kind of help a lot of the homeless people that are out there. And so homeless rate has skyrocketed. So the PB&J Project has been cool. It was tough. My daughter and I kind of started it. We just did it randomly, and it wasn't like we did it every week. It wasn't like there were times that we just tried to go through that process. And then I had a couple of friends that were doing this as well over in Seattle. And that is one of the sad things of the homeless count has skyrocketed, as we all know. I mean, drive through, say, Seattle and other metro cities, and it's a city within a city. But on the inspiring standpoint of it, I do think there's been a massive silver lining. I have loved watching even you, Tabitha, as friends. I have loved watching this budding relationship and the things that are going on in your life and the things that are, the happiness that you have in your life. And then seeing the same things of how many on social media, especially on Facebook, like how many people are spending so much more time with their kids. I mean, we've gone back to board games. We've gone back to this mode. I love, some of the stars have done, I felt like the celebrities have done a great job of just putting themselves out there. They've put themselves out there. You've got these celebrities that are showing up with no makeup. They're not doing their hair, and they're just jumping on. They're jumping on, putting a tweet out there. They're putting something on Instagram, and they're just being real. And I think that was super important for our teens. That I've done those two presentations that I did, the cards you're dealt and don't judge a book by its cover. And I think that it is really awesome starting to see what is out there. Now, TikTok, it's kind of fun to watch TikTok.
I love TikTok.
Yeah, it's funny because there's so many cool things. I mean, like, there's nothing warms my heart than watching dogs. I love dogs. I love dogs and the cool stuff that dogs do and people are doing stuff. But like the grandparents doing, they're doing their TikTok with their grandkids, and they're like, you know what? I'm like, when would that have ever happened? Like, we are, and some people are in quarantine, and then just watching that development of all of us, really, we've been reset. We have had a refocus. We have had a mode. We have never been further away from family members, but we've never been closer. And I know that even teachers, I have to end on this because I have never been more proud nationwide, worldwide, of what teachers are doing in front of their kids, the paraeducators that are out there. Because the thing is we're right there. I mean, you're in a classroom, but you're in their home. And so, in my mind, the biggest superstars also on top of teachers and paraeducators are the parents and the daycare providers. And what they're doing, it's like they have been pushed to the limit. And I can't even say enough, oh my goodness, thank you. Like, you are the MVPs, you are the unsung heroes on top of those first responders that are out there. And I think we've actually had a chance to finally kind of come back and respect the nurses, the doctors, the people that are involved in this thing. And I think it's that piece where we are all finally starting to go, it doesn't matter. And I don't ever get into politics ever, but I think we are starting to see humanity, and we're starting to say, my goodness, thank you for what you've done on the front line. Thank you for what you've done as teachers, as nurses, as police officers and firemen and everything else. So that's where I see the silver lining, that is inspiration, and just thank people. The last piece I have been doing with people is going old school, writing down maybe one, if not two or three old school notes. It can be to a mentor. It could be to somebody that changed your life. Send it out. We've got time. Home, whatever it is, write it down, send it out. You could change someone's life reaching out to somebody that may be 75 years old and was your second grade teacher. How much would that change their life? That is like so powerful and far more authentic and genuine than just the old school text message. So that's what I would say.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I love that you're really seeing the positive during this weird time.
Yeah,
Um,
it's crazy. It is
right.
crazy.
And what people are saying, they're like celebrities are doing this or this is, but you see like, oh no, there's some positive things
Yeah,
people are really doing. And it's amazing. Like you said, TikTok, everyone makes fun about TikTok. I'm like, no, no, no. I will laugh, like almost pee my pants laughing at the
right.
old people that are like hilarious that their kids,
Yeah,
hey, try this, grandma. And grandma's already funny. And you give her TikTok.
yeah.
I can't.
I've got a group. I've got some of the best. I really am really fortunate. I've got some of the best friends that we've been, I don't know if text is fantastic, but we'll text the dumbest stuff back and forth. I mean, like TikTok videos and stuff. But it keeps us engaged. It keeps us close. It keeps us, we've got guys that are all over the state of Washington and Northwest. It's like I'm really blessed to have such a group of dudes that I can kind of keep, and we're still connected. But it's connected through something funny on TikTok or something that we've made. It's just social media has helped us, and it's also hurt us in a lot of areas for teas and stuff. But we're getting there, and I really believe that we're starting to see a different perspective as a human spirit and a mutual respect for those people on the front lines. And so and even for yourself, Tabitha, your leadership in venues and mediums like this, thank you. That's all I can say is thank you for what you're doing, because I know you're changing people's lives and just having these conversations.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. And that's the goal of this podcast is connect more people and to like really, that's what I mean. I've been lately, it's been happening a lot, which is makes my heart just full. Is like someone will text me like, oh my gosh, they're a marketing agency. And they're like, I got a new lead because they heard our interview, or
Nice.
there was some LGBT stuff going on. And so they heard my interview with someone from that like organizes a group here in North Idaho, reached out to us as my teen is going through some stuff. I need this outlet. And so it's just like, this is why I do this. And so I really appreciate you seeing that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. I love hearing that. And you are, and that's a thank you. I mean, you're in that hot seat from the standpoint of, you've got to ask questions, but you are changing lives and your impact, and it's a lot of work. I know that this is a lot of work to put together, and you have to definitely edit people like this situation. So I appreciate that, and no, just keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to keep pushing you. I'm going to start sending you random messages. Where are you at on the book? Where are you at? Where are you going to be? When are you going to jump on stage? Let's get the rolling. So that's good.
I know. All right. So if someone wants to connect with you or reach out to you, what is the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, probably, LinkedIn and Twitter are primarily my business end of things, from the education world to Positive Focus Group. So one of the it's Doug Cap. It's Cap is spelled KAP. So Doug Cap on Twitter and on Instagram. I don't do a lot of my Instagram. The best way is probably Twitter or LinkedIn. You can also reach out to me at thepositivefocusgroup.com. That's another area that people can reach me. But usually I like to keep it somewhat personal. And I've had people reach out on Facebook. I have not taken anything to Facebook. I primarily just more for friends and that's just been something. But if people want to reach out to me on Facebook, that's great too. So.
Perfect. Well, Doug, thank you so much for giving me your time this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is great. Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing, and I totally appreciate you.
Thanks for listening to Keeping Tabs. I'm Tabitha Kroc, and every Monday I release a podcast about different community members here in North Idaho. And then we end the weeks on Fridays with a podcast about the things I'm passionate about: outdoors, adventures, sports, the van life, and even current events. So if you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube, Spotify, or iTunes. Thank you again. Now go be kind and do something great.